Bienvenidos a Bengals en Cuarta y Gol, tu podcast de WhoDey Nation en español dedicado 100% a los Cincinnati Bengals. Here's Jay Morrison of The Athletic, and of course, from that podcast we all listen to hear that podcast growling. I really want to thank Jay Morrison for finding the time between the agenda to join us here in WhoDey Nation in español. How are you, Jay? Welcome to WhoDey Nation for all the Latin American community.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Orson.
Oh, well, first, I got to tell you, we've been following you for quite a few years with the articles in The Athletic, and of course, with a whole lot of anecdotes that you've told us about in the podcast. And the first question that I would like to pop for you, maybe you're not used to these kind of questions because it's a little bit more personal, of course. But I know you've been covering the Bengals for a few years now. I heard the stories about sneaking into games when you were younger. I mean, before becoming a journalist. Maybe some zones that weren't that well guarded and that led you maybe going like we all did when we had the chance. Right. But before your life as a journalist, how is the sensation of covering that team that you follow or that maybe you cheer for? I mean, I'm guessing you are a fan of the Bengals.
I was growing up. I was a freshman in high school. I went to Super Bowl 16, the first Super Bowl they lost. My dad had season tickets for the Bengals. He had season tickets for the Reds. After I graduated from college, I lived in Columbus, Ohio, which is about 2 hours north of Cincinnati. And then I worked there for a couple years. They didn't have professional sports at the time. I wanted to get back into my hometown. And I first started off covering high schools like most young reporters do and kind of worked my way up. And it's not been as difficult as I would anticipate. You kind of learn to remove the fandom. You can't be an effective reporter if you're acting as a fan, and you can't be a great fan if you're acting as a reporter. They don't really go together. Now, of course, you don't openly root for the team. That's frowned on. That every game you go to, there's the announcement, no cheering in the press box. But obviously, we get to know these guys on a personal level. And I always tell people, you like to see good things happen to good people. And it just, yes, it makes your job easier because it's much easier to go into a locker room and ask guys about what they did well as opposed to where they screwed up. But there's when you develop some relationships with these guys, you want to see them do well. You want to see them succeed. Zach Taylor in particular, the head coach, has been very good to us. He had a very rough start to his career, was always accessible, still is. And so you pull for guys like that. You want them to get it turned around. And it's not being a fan. It's just being human. You want to see good people have success. So it's not been that tough to kind of take off the fan hat and put the reporter hat on. It's pretty much mandatory. Whether you want to do it or not, you have to. But I found it very easy to do early on.
But I'm guessing you sometimes get happy or sad, but for what happens in the field, right? I mean, even though you have that hat you're mentioning, so you just put.
Yeah, you just you're not happy or sad for what happens on the field. A colleague, I don't even want to say colleague. He's brilliant. He just retired. I followed him when I was in college. Paul Doherty, a great columnist, and his line was always, "I root for me. I want the best storyline." Sometimes a loss is the best storyline. It's the more interesting thing to write about. And you never want overtime. It's like anybody else. I want to clock out when I'm supposed to clock out. I don't want to sit there an extra 20, 30 minutes. There's not so much cheering for what actually happens on the field. You're looking for good storylines, compelling stories, more so than results.
Nice. Well, that's a nice take because sometimes we're, especially in sports, we're used to hearing some journalists or some fans that have access to a microphone or maybe a computer keyboard try to extend that fandom sensation, right? And I'm guessing the most professional thing to do, even though you grew up being maybe a fan, well, is keep that maybe aside for a bit. Do you think when your job as a journalist is done, when you move on things, will you ever be able to cheer back for the team?
Yeah, I think I will. I mean, for one, my family, all my friends, they're all Bengal fans. So just like I like to see the players and the coaches have success, I would like to see my friends and family enjoy Super Bowl runs and big wins and that type of thing. And that was one of the things. It was pretty emotional when last year's playoff game, because it was in Tennessee. My wife and my son were able to buy some expensive tickets, secondary market, and they went down, stayed with me in my hotel room, went to the game with some other friends. And when Evan McPherson kicked the game-winning field goal, my wife was taking video in the stands because there was a ton of Bengals fans there, and she's getting everybody's reaction, and she just spins in a circle. And the last person she comes to is my 21-year-old son, who is bawling his eyes out. And I get emotional now thinking about it.
Of course.
We being a reporter and kind of removing yourself from that, you forget the emotion involved and the passion and what these results mean to people. And so, yeah, I think when I do hang it up, I will. I mean, I still root for the Reds. I don't cover the Reds, but I'm in the media market, and for a while there, I would help out and do some Red stuff. I haven't covered a Reds game in a couple years, so I don't find that difficult now that I never cover them anymore to root for them. It just kind of goes back to what I said originally. You want to see good things happen to good people, and you want to,
Yeah.
whether they're playing and coaching or whether they're rooting.
Do you have any Bengals jerseys back there in any drawer?
I don't believe I do anymore. I ran
Okay.
a 5K on Halloween that was you're supposed to dress up in costume, and it's like, what? I'm struggling enough to finish a 5K. This was when I first started running, and so my friend and I decided, well, we would just go as Bengal fans, and this is back when the team was not very good, and so we wore Bengals jerseys with bags on our heads. I think we got about a quarter mile into the race and decided the bags were not a good idea to be running in. So that I don't know if I still have that jersey or not. For people that don't follow the team that closely, it was a Jermaine Gresham jersey. I think it was
Oh.
from his rookie year. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was. It was. I may still have it in a closet, but I haven't worn it since that race, which was well over a decade ago.
All right. Well, now going to the Bengal stuff, which is also something of very much interest for Latin community. What would you think, Jay, following the Bengals as a journalist? What would you think was the reason for success in 2021 for that team?
I mean, Joe Burrow. It all starts and ends with him. It's just a remarkable recovery from the ACL, and then really they were having a good year, better than expected. But when it really took off, end of November, early December, is when they just decided to just put everything in Joe Burrow's hands. And they had that loss to the 49ers, and they got down in the red zone. They got passive. They tried to run the ball. Ended up only kicking a field goal. Then the 49ers came back and scored the walk-off touchdown. And from that moment on, Zach Taylor realized that we're going to go as far as Joe Burrow is going to take us. And they just put the ball in his hands and let him go. And we saw that magical run that they went on the end of December and then all the way through the playoffs and within a few seconds of winning the Super Bowl. So he's at the top of the list by far, but you can't discount what Jamar Chase did to that offense. I mean, the whole debate in the preseason last year or in the draft run up last year was O-line, Penei Sewell, or the wide receiver Jamar Chase. And everyone's like, you got to protect Burrow, you got to protect Burrow. And the Bengals knew they had this vision. They were never they it's not that they had anything against Penei Sewell, but they had this vision of what Jamar Chase could be and what he could mean to this offense and how he could really unlock everything within this offense by taking the top off, having the deep balls. And to their credit, they saw the vision before it came to reality, and he was another big part of that. And I think if you're a Bengals fan, you have to be really encouraged. I mean, Joe Burrow in year 3, Jamar Chase in year 2. Um, it feels like the Bengals are going to open up the pocketbook and pay Joe Burrow whatever it takes to keep him here long term. I would imagine the same will be the case with Jamar Chase in a few years. The future is really, really bright for this franchise. And then you can't discount. I think the defense gets overlooked a lot. What Lou Anarumo did with kind of a no-name defense last year, just his mad scientist mode, where he was just changing up the scheme and the game plan, not just every game, sometimes half to half in games, with the changes they made in the second half against Kansas City in the regular season, and the changes they made in the second half of that AFC Championship game. He deserves a lot of credit. He's probably the most unsung reason why they got to the Super Bowl, because as good as Joe Burrow was, it was the defense really that carried them in that playoff run. Joe Burrow made the plays, scored enough points to win. That defense was getting turnovers, 8 interceptions in 4 playoff games. I mean, it was a pretty remarkable run all the way around. And that's what you need to have something special happen. You need the unsung guys. You need your stars to play like stars. You need your average guys to step up and have career years. And that happened with a lot of spots on this team.
Absolutely agree. And I'm guessing that excludes the whole fluke narrative, right?
I think it does. I don't understand where that's coming from. I do understand people, the regression narrative, where it's happened too many times to ignore, where the Super Bowl loser, it's such a devastating loss. It's so hard to get back and make that climb again, and you have to have a lot of things go right to get there. And let's face it, the Bengals did. They were very fortunate on the injury front. They did have a lot of things go their way, but they created a lot of those breaks too. And I think the one reason that they don't really fit that regression narrative is so many times it's the Super Bowl loser is a team that has hard decisions to make the next year, roster wise. You've got veterans who are in the final year of their contract, and it's like, can you afford to sign them? And the Bengals don't. They are still a young team on the come, and they're going to have 10 of the 11 starters back on defense, with the only one gone being Larry Ogunjobi, who really was kind of a half starter with BJ Hill. So they let Ogunjobi go. They bring back BJ Hill. And then almost you do have all the key positions back on offense. They upgrade at tight end with Hayden Hurst for CJ Uzama, and then they go out and do what fans have been screaming for years, and sign 3 quality veteran offensive linemen in free agency. I mean, Joe Burrow took him to the Super Bowl getting sacked 70 times and hit 139 times. I can't imagine his numbers are going to be anywhere close to that this year. And he, as a player, you just would assume the trajectory of a young quarterback, he's going to be better. His protection's going to be better. Therefore, this offense is going to be better. And it feels like the defense is going to be better. So I get that sometimes you don't get the breaks you got the previous year, but I just don't see this team falling off the cliff and being one of those regression type teams that come off a Super Bowl loss and just can't get over it and have a mediocre follow-up year.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And do you feel that what you just mentioned overall, do you feel that this success brought more attention to the team from the rest of the league? Because we have to deal with this. The Bengals, as you said, sometimes are underlooked.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the rest of the league, I think the rest of the country, speaking for you guys, the rest of the world, I mean, they put people on notice that this is a young team on the come. And yeah, maybe they don't get back to the Super Bowl this year. Maybe they struggle just to make the playoffs. Maybe they miss the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's not going to send them into a tailspin. I think they're going to be a favorite to win the division next year too, unless you're talking some sort of catastrophic injury to some super important people. But this is a team. This is a team that it's built to last as far as success goes. And um, I I don't know how much they put the rest of the league on notice, because I think there was a lot of respect there, that they the Bengals, I mean, everybody scouted Joe Burrow, everybody scouted Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, people around the league in the personnel departments and the coaching departments. They knew the talent that this team was assembling, and to see them succeed with such a glaring weakness at offensive line, and then they see what they did in free agency this year to fix it. I think it's more a media slash fan narrative that the Bengals were a fluke. I think the teams and the personnel departments around the league realize that they're legitimate contenders and will be for a while.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also thinking about media and seeing what other things might have done, such as the Broncos. I mean, between the AFC, right? And
Hmm.
of course, the Bills being as successful as they are. Talking about maybe the top AFC teams, are the Bengals still underdogs?
Yeah, well, I don't know if underdog. I mean, they're not the favorite, so I guess that does make them an underdog. In my mind, Buffalo's the team to beat in the AFC this year. I don't even know if they're the favorite to win their division. I give Baltimore a slight nod if we're going to set odds, but um, there it's crazy what happened with all that talent from the NFC that came over to the AFC. You mentioned the Broncos when they have Russell Wilson now. The
Mhm.
Raiders get Devontae Adams. The Bills get Von Miller, who gave the Bengals fits in the Super Bowl. It's like wherever you look, it's turning into an arms race in the AFC, and it's gonna be really, really challenging, especially for a Bengals team that won the division last year and has a first place schedule this year, and their extra game, if you will, is against the Cowboys, which is another really, really difficult team. Plus, you throw in the Buccaneers in there. I mean, it's the rotational pieces of the schedule are tough. The slotted ones where you're playing the other division champs, that's tough because you won the division. And the entire AFC is just so much better this year. They could be a better team and not win as many games as they did last year. It's going to be a real challenge, and especially we talked about this last year a lot, where it was going to be really important for them to get off to a fast start and kind of let these young guys experience success and build confidence and watch it snowball. And that did kind of happen. They got off to a really strong start. It's going to be particularly important this year, not for the confidence aspect, because I think this team's got that in spades now, but the last part of that schedule is really tough.
Yeah.
You don't want to go into December saying, "Oh, we have to win 5 of the next 6." That might not be doable. So they do need to make hay early in the year with some of these more winnable games.
Yeah, you're right. But some of this team, and it is funny, they haven't even played together. I mean, not all of the pieces have come to the team. They haven't even started the game, and they're already a top, right? So we have to check on that, since the Bengals have been playing together now for a year or a couple of years in some squads, and well, maybe a rebound is it's more visible on a team that has played together for more time, right? We'll have to wait and see on that. Well, time is running, and I would like also to ask a wild bold prediction for the Bengals from your side.
What kind of prediction?
A bold prediction, a very
Oh, a
wild
bold.
prediction. That Yeah, a bold wild prediction. What would you
Okay.
think that might happen this year for these Bengals?
Oh boy, let's see what would be bolder than going to the Super Bowl again. Let's see. How about this? That the Bengals defense will be a top 5 defense in both yards allowed and points allowed. I just I really like what they've done with the secondary. I think the linebackers are all young and upcoming and have looked terrific so far. Logan Wilson excluded. He is young and he is upcoming. He's a rising star in this league, but we have not seen him much because he had the offseason shoulder surgery. We're not going to see him till week 1 against Pittsburgh. But the big question was that D line and the depth, and they've drafted and signed some young pieces that have been really impressive. I think the pass rush is going to be just as formidable as it was last year. You've got guys that can cover on the back end. Still expect Jesse Bates to come back. If he doesn't, you don't feel as bad now with Dax Hill lighting things up in the first round pick, lighting things up in the preseason the way he has. I think that defense is going to be really special this year, and that'll be my bold pick. They'll be top 5 in yards allowed and points allowed.
Yeah, I agree. Those additions with Zachary Carter and Jeff Gunter have, well, they look like they're really going to pay off and give a hard time to opposite tackles. So let's wait and see if Joseph Ozai and, of course, Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson can keep doing what they've been doing and make a very fearful pass rush for the Bengals. So, well, last question. We're over the 20 minutes mark here, but I would like to know, and I'm guessing all the WhoDey Nation would like to know if you think personally that Jesse Bates is ever going to show up before week 1.
Oh yeah, I do. I mean, there's not too many people that'll just light $13 million on fire. I don't see him doing that. The way he's been so involved in staying in communication with the players, showing up in the suite for the preseason opener, it doesn't have that contentious feel that a lot of these holdouts have. And I think he understands the Bengals' point. He thinks he should be paid as one of the top safeties in football, but that's what football is. You don't operate in a vacuum. It's a team sport, and just as it takes all 11 pieces on the field to make a play happen, it works the same way in roster construction. And he's good friends with Joe Burrow. He knows the amount of money he's going to command next year. So I think Jesse Bates gets it. He's a really bright guy. He's a business savvy guy. He made his point. He's going to sit out training camp and risk any kind of injury that would derail him from making big money next year. But I see him reporting that first week of practice leading up to the Steelers game and being on the field week 1 against Pittsburgh.
Well, Jay, before we leave, because, well, time did its job, is there anything you would like to say to the Latin Bengals following community?
No, just thank you for those of you who do listen to hear that podcast growling and read us in The Athletic. And maybe you've brought something to my attention here. Maybe I will speak with the people at the Athletic and see if there's a way to have a Spanish language conversion where our articles can be read. I don't know if I don't even know if there's software that does that where you can just translate a web page. It's probably not perfect when you're dealing with names and football terms and that type of thing, but it is good to know that this team that for so long has just had fans in Cincinnati is really expanding across the country and across the world. And like I said, I root for me, so that the more people that listen and read me, if the Bengals are winning to make that happen, then it's all good.
Well, Jay, we really appreciate your time, your takes, your input. It'll be a pleasure to have you whenever you have time here again. And we really want to thank you here at WhoDey Nation in Español. Thank you for your time, Jay. See you around.
Thank you, Orson. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'd love to come back on.
Great.
Llegaste al final de este video. Encuentra más contenido de la única y original WhoDey Nation en español suscribiéndote aquí.